Hi guys, welcome to this episode of Decode Mains 2025 where we discuss about the geography section of the GS1 paper. Now before we jump into the geography questions, I hope that all my students preparing for next year UPSC Mains 2026 have seen all the previous episodes, have been making notes along with me when I'm writing the answers so that they understand one, the evolving trends in that section, the second is how to prepare for that section, the third is how to structure the answer, and the fourth is how to bring that paper specific language when they are writing the answers. So I hope that you learn all these skills as and when we cover different sections in different videos of this series of Decode Mains 2025. Now, Decode Mains 2025 was designed to help all my student communities to have an in-detail discussion of every section of the UPSC Mains paper, including the essay. I hope that you people will realize the efforts that has gone into it to bring this into fruition, and I request all my students to do one thing, is to please share this video with as many people as possible, because the more number of views, the more incentivized we are to do this on a regular basis. So I request you to go on and please share this video with all your friends and your communities so it reaches across India to all the UPSC aspirants who actually are in need to be guided, especially in the UPSC Mains preparation. Alright guys, with that, let us jump right to it, and today we will discuss about the geography section of the GS1 paper. Okay, now before we jump to how the questions have been, how should we prepare and all that things, first thing you should always understand is the importance of geography section in GS1. Okay, so if I take the geography questions, you usually get 8 questions every year from 2014 to 2025. 8 questions have always been from geography. Okay, and out of these 8 questions, 4 will be of 10 marker and 4 will be of 15 marker. Okay, so you have 40, you have 60, so overall you are going to get 100 marks out of 250 in GS1, mainly due to geography. Okay, the second thing is the question numbers of geography is question 4, 5, 6, 7, this will be the 10 marker, question 14, 15, 16 and question 17, this will be the 15 marker. Okay, these are a few things that you should understand to know the weightage of geography in paper 1. Now I'm telling you again, geography from the beginning till today has always been on the easier side. Okay, this year I have been listening to a lot of different analysis where they say that geography questions were a little tricky. They were not. Because they asked more questions on socio-economic geography. Geography is not difficult. Actually, the more questions they ask on socio-economic geography, the more easy it is to answer for a geography student, provided that they have developed this so-called keyword approach. Okay, you should have developed the keyword approach, and you should know how to integrate diagrams, into your answer. Okay, integrating diagram into the answer gives the aesthetic value of geography, and using the keyword gives the language of geography. So this is basically the language, this is basically the aesthetics. Both are very, very important. Okay, so giving that keyword approach along with diagrams in socio-economic geography becomes your edge to get good marks, and my students from Advanced Mains Masterclass, I believe, would have aced this particular geography section of GS1. Now, before we jump into going individually and discussing every question in detail and we start writing the answers, model answers individually, let us just look at all the 8 questions in a bird's eye view. Try to understand the changing trends, the necessary approach, and how to get good marks in geography, and how you should be preparing for the next year UPSC Mains 2026. Alright, so let us start off with it. Let us just look at the 8 questions in a bird's eye view and try to give the analysis of what this year's question was, and how can you expect the next year's question, and how should you be preparing for the next year's UPSC Mains 2026. Okay, so let us look at it. Now look at this. As I told you, 4, 5, 6 and 7, these are the 10 markers. Let me just read it out. The first one is, how are climate change and sea level rise affecting the very existence of many island nations? Discuss with examples. Okay, now the thematic here is environmental geography. Okay, environmental geography, and the question or the concept is more on climate change. Now what you should understand is climate change is a thematic every year there will always be one question. So it is not like they're asking something from outside. Climate change is something that you should have prepared if you are writing mains exam. It can be asked in paper 3 also, it can be asked in paper 1 also. So it is a theme that you have to prepare. Alright, so this was on expected lines. The only thing is, many people have seen the analysis that they're adding a lot of facts. So what they do, they just Google this answer or ChatGPT this answer. So whatever you get in the Google or ChatGPT is more or less a compendium of facts. So you add a lot of facts. When you add a lot of facts, what happens? This answer will seem like GS3. So it should not seem like GS3. You have to write this answer as geography. So how to write this answer as geography is, as I told you, you have to bring the diagram. You have to show the world map and show different islands in the world which are highly vulnerable. So you have to draw the world map and show it. And then you have to talk about the geographical consequences, not just talking about facts like 1 meter rise in sea level by IPCC assessment 6 report. Those are things that you can add here and there, but please don't overdo it because this is not GS3. Here you have to talk about geography. The geographical subject or academic should be something that should be highlighted. So I hope you understand this. That is why look at every question when we discuss individually, and please write down the answers, the model answers, as and when I keep writing it down, so that you get used to how to write answers in that particular section, and in this case geography, how to bring the geography specific language in your model answers. If you want to learn that, you make sure that you write along with me. Okay, so with that, this is the fourth question that was asked in 2025 mains, was on climate change, and I know that most of my students would have done a very good job. So this is the fourth question. The fifth one, look at this. What are non-primary activities? How are these activities related to physiographic features in India? Discuss with suitable examples. Okay, now look, the very basic test of any student is to first tell what is this non-farm primary activity. You have to define that non-farm primary activity to tell that how non-farm primary activities, non-agricultural activities that are directly dependent on nature. First, you have to make it clear that you know the concept very well. So first define that, and then if it is dependent on nature, obviously it will be influenced by physiographical features. So you can start enumerating the different physiographical features that will influence the economic activities. But the entire takeaway here is Indian geography. Okay, and this is coming from socio-economic part of Indian geography. That's what I told. Okay, Indian geography, socio-economic part. This is a question. Again, it is not difficult. If I ask you to write about forestry in India, if I ask you to write about fishing in India, if I ask you to write about livestock in India, or if I ask you to write about mining in India, look at this, you will have so much of data to write, and you can write 4 individual diagrams on 4 different themes of forestry, fishing, mining and livestock. That's what I told. This question is not that demanding, provided that you have an idea of what is non-farm primary activity. Okay, so again, a straightforward question if you ask me. Socio-economic geography part of Indian geography is important. So this is one that comes from that section. Always there will be one question that will come on the socio-economic geography part of Indian geography. Okay, so this is about the Indian geography part. The third 10 marker is explain briefly the ecological and economic benefits of solar energy generation in India with suitable example. Okay, look at this. This is the second Indian geography question that is coming on socio-economic geography. Usually one question come, but they have asked 2 questions. So that is why we can say that we are moving towards inclination of socio-economic geography over physical geography. Okay, let me tell you later how to learn that. But now what you can say is, again, it is not a difficult question. Last time, if you remember, previous year question of 2022, they had asked about the potential of solar energy in India. They are asked about that. So now they are asking about how solar energy in India will help ecologically and how it will help economically. So this is again being asked on the same thematic. So if you have practiced the thematics, you will be able to more or less answer this. Again, it is not a difficult question. Ecological benefits, you can definitely tell 3. Economical benefits, you can definitely tell 3 even now if I ask you. So again, a straightforward question that is being asked. Okay, the next 7th question is a direct question. Everyone should have hit it outside the ballpark because it's pretty direct. Okay, so it is coming from oceanography. Okay, so it is, what are tsunamis? How and where are they formed? What are their consequences? Explain with examples. Now, it can be considered or assumed that it is coming from oceanography, or you can also assume that it is coming from disasters, because disasters is also a theme in geography. You have to understand that they can ask you any disasters. For example, in last year's mains exam, they had asked about cloud burst. Okay, they had asked about cloudburst. So cloudburst is a concept that you can take in climatology also, but cloudburst is a concept that you can take in disasters also. So always you should keep in your mind that when you go to write geography mains exam, you should also revise your environment book as well as your disaster. So both the notes of environment and disaster is important because you can use them in order to write a good answer. Okay, so I hope that you understood this. Anyways, we will at the end summarize what are the takeaways. So the 7th question, again a very straightforward question, that is, what are tsunamis, how and where are they formed, what are their consequences, explain with examples. A pretty straightforward one. So I would say the 10 markers were actually easy. Now you can ask, sir, you are telling it easy because you are sitting outside the exam hall, you are not sitting inside. Definitely valid. So all those students there within the time constraint may feel difficult. I am not telling about that at all, but you can frame the answer with your common sense. You don't have to read special books to write answers here, and that is why I am telling it as easy. When you put it in the time constraint, you may feel difficult, so I will not take away any pressure felt by them, and I will not take away any credit that they should get for writing the answer in such time constraint. Definitely that is there, but overall, if you have practiced properly and if you have practiced a lot of mock tests on geography, you can write good answers for this. That is my takeaway. Okay, so this is about the first 4 questions. Now let us look at the 15 markers. So look at this. The 14th question is, look at this, give a geographical explanation of the distribution of offshore oil reserves of the world. How are they different from the onshore occurrences of oil reserves? Now this question is difficult. Okay, why would I say difficult is, look, they are asking you should give the geographical explanation of the distribution of offshore reserves. Okay, so basically you can draw the world map. When you draw the world map, to show the distribution of oil reserves is easy. How to always recollect the distribution of oil reserves is, go continent wise and just see where oil is available. That is, if you look at the continental shelf of that particular continent, oil is there. Okay, for example, if you take North America, Gulf of Mexico as oil. If you take Europe, North Sea as oil. If you take Africa, the West Africa as oil, or the Mediterranean part of the African countries have oil. If you take Asia, you have Arabian Peninsula where there is Persian Gulf, that has oil. If you take Southeast Asia, the continental shelf of Indonesia has oil. So every continent, if you take the continental shelf, there will be offshore oil reserves. That is definitely easy to write. But what they are asking is, along with the distribution, you have to give geographical explanation. Look at this. This is where to write the geographical explanation for everything individually becomes very difficult. Okay, so I will tell you a trick how to go about it later, but overall, because you're asking geographical explanation with the geographical distribution, to write specific points for everything becomes a little difficult, and that's why I am putting this question under the category of difficult. Okay, now the second part is also a little tricky. Now look at this. How are they different from the onshore oil occurrences? Now look, whenever they say comparison, people will always think that I have to compare it technically. Not necessary. Okay, look at this. You can always compare two different entities by having lateral thinking. What is lateral thinking? Look at this. One is obviously occurrences is one difference. The second is the level of technology needed. That is the second difference. The third is environmental degradation, or the level of environmental degradation. That's the third difference. The fourth is what will be the future outlook of onshore versus offshore. See, this is called lateral thinking. So lateral thinking will always help you to write comparing and contrasting questions very nicely. This also I will teach when we come to that question, but I am just telling you that here in the second part, many of my students that I spoke to, they thought that they have to write technical answers, that's why they couldn't write a proper thing. But I will tell you, you should not worry about technicalities. You can always write a very good comparison just by having some common sense about that aspect. Okay, this we will come at when we start writing answers in detail. That is why stay with me, listen to me and write along with me to understand these skills which are not taught in any class, which will always be learned by writing a lot of answers. That's why I'm making you people to write answers along with me so that you mandatorily learn these skills. Okay, so this is the 14th one. Let us discuss this when we are dealing with in detail. So the next one, however, coming back to that, the 14th one, again, this question is coming from socio-economic geography of the world. Socio-economic geography of the world. Okay, again, look at this. Socio-economic geography is becoming more and more important. That is what I'm trying to tell you. Next, let us come to the 15th question. The 15th question is, how can artificial intelligence and drones be effectively used along with GIS and RS techniques in location and aerial planning? Okay, now here many of my students had done a mistake in structuring. So basically they have told about AI and drones in the introduction, and in the body they have directly gone to tell how AI and drones will help in aerial planning. So they have directly jumped to that. The question is actually a little nuanced. So you have to think a little bit. Read the question again and see how you should structure it. See, how can artificial intelligence and drones be effectively used along with GIS and RS techniques in locational and aerial planning? Okay, all right. Introduction, you can write anything. Okay, let us say that you wrote the introduction. Here in the body, first you have to tell how remote sensing and GIS helps in aerial planning. Okay, then this is the first body. So in the first part you have to talk about remote sensing and GIS helping in aerial planning. So here you can bring disaster management, here you can bring urban planning, here you can bring agriculture, here you can bring rural development, different things you can bring and talk how RS and GIS will help in aerial planning. Then the second part is how AI and drones will make aerial planning more effective. How AI and drones will make the aerial planning more effective along with RS and GIS. So here you should tell how it will make more effective is, if I take AI, okay, you should always write these 2 points: processing a lot of data and predicting patterns. These are the 2 things that are very useful. The next is, if you take RIS, the next is if you take drones. If you take drones, one is monitoring, the another is accessibility into inaccessible areas. So these are the 2 keywords in AI that you should always use. These are the 2 keywords in drones that you should always use. So by bringing processing and predictability power, and by bringing monitoring and accessibility power, how GIS and RS can be made more effective. That is all you have to talk about. Here in this answer, it is not about creating a lot of jargons or creating a lot of technicalities. It is about clear flow of your answer. If you have written a very good flow, you will get very good marks. I will teach you how to do that. Just wait for a few minutes where we will be writing the answer individually and in detail, but I am just giving you a glimpse of how different questions were asked. Overall, this question is also coming from the application geography part of socio-economic geography of the world. Socio-economic geography of the world. Let me just change the color so that you get to know. This is coming from the application geography part of the socio-economic geography of the world. This question is also socio-economic geography of the world. Okay. Now, looking at the 16th question. 16th question is a direct question from plate tectonics. Look at this. Discuss how the changes in the shape and size of continents and ocean basins of the planet take place due to tectonic movements of crustal masses. Basically, it's a direct and a very easy question. They are asking on the theory of plate tectonics. As you know, they will always keep asking, every alternative year they keep asking one question directly or indirectly on plate tectonics. Usually it was indirect, but this is pretty direct. Okay. However, for example, they have asked you about Pacific Ring of Fire. They have asked you about why Japanese islands will always have volcanoes and eruptions. All this is nothing but plate tectonics. Okay. So here they have asked you directly. Anyways, so this comes under the topic of geomorphology, that is physical geography of the world. Physical geography of the world. Okay, so this is again an easy question. 16th one, we'll look at it once we start discussing. The 17th one, look at this. Discuss the distribution and density of population in the Gangetic River Basin with special reference to land, soil and water resources. Again, the question is easy provided you are good in Indian geography. For you to get good marks in mains, you have to be good in Indian geography, because I know many students across India who don't like Indian geography because it is made very factual. Yes, it is factual and I agree in prelims, but in mains you should know some amount of facts, but you should have a spatial sense of India. If you don't have the spatial sense, that is the regional sense of India, then it becomes very difficult. Okay. Anyways, we will get there. But overall, this comes from Indian physical geography. Indian physical geography. Okay. So these were the 8 questions that we saw in UPSC Mains 2025. So what is the final takeaway? Now look at this. So if you look at the questions that has been asked in 2025, some of the things that I would like to tell is, see, there are 4 parts in geography. One is physical geography of the world. The second is physical geography of India. Okay, the next is socio-economic geography of India. And the third is socio-economic geography of the world. Okay, so these are the 4 different parts of geography that you have to learn for mains exam. Okay, so if you take this here, look at this, physical geography of the world. They have asked one question on climate change, one question on tsunamis, and one question on plate tectonics. Okay, so the chapter of climatology becomes important, the chapter of oceanography becomes important, the chapter of geomorphology becomes important. Physical geography of the world you have to read in full. So 3 questions come from physical geography of the world. Every year 4 to 5 questions come, but this year it is 3 questions. So physical geography of the world, 3 questions has come. Now physical geography of India, they have asked about Gangetic basin. So they have asked about Gangetic basin. So one question is from physical geography of India. Alright, the next, socio-economic geography of India, they have asked 2 questions. So 2 questions are, one, they have asked about the non-farm primary activity, and the second question that they have asked is solar energy, how it will help the ecological and economical benefits. Okay, so these are the 2 questions that they are asked from socio-economic geography. And then socio-economic geography of the world, they have asked 2 questions. So those 2 questions are, one, they have asked about offshore and onshore oil reserves. The second question that they have asked is artificial intelligence and drones, and how does this help in aerial planning. Okay, so overall, as you can see, 4 questions are coming from socio-economic geography of India and the world, and around 4 questions are coming from physical geography of India and the world. But before, the socio-economic geography was relatively less. Now they are brought the socio-economic geography on par with physical geography. So you should be good in socio-economic geography of the world and India along with physical geography. What happens is, in our prelims exam, when we are studying for geography, we are more emphasizing on physical geography, neglecting the socio-economic geography. That is why when we learn GS1 geography for mains also, we are more inclined towards physical geography, neglecting the socio-economic geography part. So please don't neglect, try to learn the socio-economic geography. I will teach you how to go about this particular socio-economic geography when we are discussing the answers, but take that cue and try to work on that and try to write a lot of answers. Alright, so I hope you people are ready to start writing answers for every question. But overall, if you look at the change in the trend, be sure that you have to give good emphasis on the socio-economic geography of the world and India. Let me tell you one thing, it may seem a little difficult, but it is not. Once you crack the ability to write different keywords in socio-economic geography, and once you crack the ability to integrate diagrams in socio-economic geography, see, the diagrams to integrate in socio-economic geography comes from how good you are in drawing diagrams in physical geography. Okay, so the same diagrams of physical geography you can take and put it in socio-economic geography also. The only thing is the labeling changes. Instead of telling physical features, you are going to tell some economic phenomena or some social phenomena there. Instead of showing the Gangetic plains, you will show the population distribution. So if you are good in physical geography diagrams, automatically you will be able to integrate those diagrams in the socio-economic geography. So be good in diagrams and get a grip on the keywords that is to be used in socio-economic geography. Some glimpse of those keywords I am going to teach you when I am writing every answer. So be ready to write the model answers along with me. Now we have just seen the evolving trends of questions in the geography section of GS1. Now let us understand how to go about preparing for geography for next year UPSC Mains 2026. Okay, so look at this. If you take geography, completing the syllabus is very important. So geography is a subject. Okay, so geography is a subject. It is not like governance. Governance has few issues, so you will take that issue and you can make notes around it. Social justice is a section, and there also you can take different thematics and start making notes around it. International relations is a section where you will take and you will start making notes around it. But geography is not like that. Geography is a subject, so you have to be good in the geography subject. You cannot take few issues and make notes around it. That will not work. You have to be good in the subject itself. So for that, whatever you have studied for prelims, make sure that you reinforce and study the same notes, but read it from mains perspective. Okay, so the first thing I would like to say is read the notes, but read it with mains perspective. Read it with mains perspective. The second one is, if you take the physical geography of India and the world, more or less this your notes should suffice. Reading your notes and writing answers will help you to become more proficient in it, because there's a lot of materials available and you people would have been taught by lecturers who would have explained this beautifully, so there's no problem with that. The third is where the problem lies, and this is where is socio economic geography of both India and the world. Okay, for this, please make sure that you read the 9th and 10th standard NCERT. This is very, very important for the socio-economic geography of India. Okay, 9th and 10th NCERT is very important. The next is for the socio-economic geography of the world, you have to read this NCERT, that is I think 12th standard NCERT, that is India, economy and people. India, economy and people. This is all you have to do. So you will be strong in the socio-economic geography of India. For the socio-economic geography of the world, this is where it's a little tricky. Now look, one, obviously your NCERT, your 6th to 12th NCERT, that will give you a normal base of understanding the socio-economic geography of the world, but it will not give you more depth. How to create that depth is, you have to create thematics. For example, look at this socio-economic geography of the world. You can create thematics like migration. You have to create thematics like industries, technology, energy, population. For example, in 2024, they had asked, examine what is demographic winter. So that is coming from the socio-economic geography of the world. Okay, so basically it is talking about demographic transition theory, but it comes from the socio-economic geography of the world. So that is what I'm trying to tell. So create thematics and try to frame questions and model answers on these thematics. For this, you can take the help of artificial intelligence, that is ChatGPT or Gemini, that is okay. Okay, but this thematics will not stop. How to keep creating depth in the thematics is by practicing lot of mock test. So that is how you can create depth in your answers, especially in socio-economic geography. Okay, when I say depth, for example, when you're writing a mock test, though you have created a broader notes on industries, they can ask you a specific automobile industry. So there, when you study the synopsis and learn about automobile industry, you have learned a little bit more about socio-economic geography. So when you are studying about resources, let us say you have studied broadly about resources, but let us say when you are writing a mock test, they are asking about lithium resource. So there you are learning a little bit more about lithium resource. So broadly you are making the notes of different thematics, but when you are writing the mock test, you are learning the depth of that thematics. So it is always good, once you create the notes, you start writing a lot of answers. So this is how you have to strengthen your socio-economic geography of the world and India. So I hope you have clarity. Unfortunately, there is no one book. There is no one book that I will tell you and you read it and you will become good. It is not like that. Socio-economic geography of the world and India comes with practice. So I have told you the base, how to create. From that base, how to build your depth. It depends on how many questions you write on a regular basis. So I hope you understood this. Now, the next is, in this entire geography, in your answers, one, diagrams are a must. Diagrams are compulsory. Okay, as geography is defined as spatial distribution of phenomena. Spatial distribution of phenomena means you can take anything and show spatially how it is distributed. So you can either draw the world map and show how it is distributed, or you can take the India map and show how it is distributed. So diagrams are compulsory in geography. Every question should have at least one diagram. That is always good, and it will always create an aesthetical value in this particular paper of geography. The second is geographical keywords. Okay, geographical keywords are very, very important. Why do I say geographical keywords are very, very important is, many people will write the geography answers in the language of GS3 while putting a lot of facts, reports and trying to give the economic dimensions more rather than geographical concepts and geographical keywords. That is why develop the habit of using geographical keywords. This will create the language of geography. Okay, and how to do this entire thing you will learn in the next section, where we are going to take every question individually and write model answers. So I hope you people are ready to write model answers with me, and I hope you people are ready to learn the exact language that needs to be brought out in these questions of geography. Let us start then, and let us start enjoying all the 8 questions of geography. I am ready, guys. I hope you are ready too. Alright guys, now let us start off with every question and discuss in detail the model answers. And before we start with the model answers, we will always create a schema. As you have seen in the previous videos, we always create a schema, and in the schema we discuss about the structuring of the answer. This will happen automatically in your mind when you write a lot of answers, but initially when you start off writing, try to always make sure that you create a schema, writing it and then following up with the answer, so that you don't miss the flow. Alright, but when you practice a lot of answers, you will automatically create that schema in your head as soon as you read the question. That will happen eventually. That is where you mature in your answer writing. That will come with time and practice. So let us start off the 4th question. Okay, the first question in the discussion, but the 4th question in the series of GS1 paper of UPSC Mains 2025 is, How are climate change and the sea level rise affecting the very existence of many island nations? Discuss with examples. Okay, they're asking how. Okay, pretty straightforward question. So let us put the schema. So in the schema, first I will talk about, in the introduction, in geography always it is good to define the concepts. Okay, for example, in non-farm primary activities, define what they are. So here you can define what is climate change and what is it caused due to. It is caused due to global warming. So this is what I will define. And yes, you can give one statistics. There is nothing wrong in giving the statistics. For example, you can put the IPCC 6 report and give the statistics. There's nothing wrong. However, defining that will create the purity of geography language. Okay, anyways, so introduction is done. So then I will draw the world map. This is where you create the differential. This is where my students will always create the differential. Okay, so you draw the world map and you show places that are vulnerable to sea level rise. Again, look, use your common sense. In the Pacific Ocean, the coral islands of the Pacific Ocean, the Kiribati, the Solomon Islands, the Fiji Islands, these are highly vulnerable. In the Indian Ocean, all the coral islands, for example, the Lakshadweep, the Maldives, the Mauritius, all these are highly vulnerable. In the Atlantic Ocean, the Caribbean islands are highly vulnerable. So, if you know the coral island distribution of the world, you can use the same coral island distribution as the vulnerable distribution of islands to sea level rise. So look at this, there is nothing like you should study for this. You can use that wisdom of what you have studied from physical geography and put it here. That's why I told integrating diagrams will always come if you know the diagrams of physical geography very well. Anyways, so this is the diagram that I will draw. Vulnerable regions across the world to sea level rise. Then I will go to the body, and in the body I will talk about how the sea level rise will affect these island nations. And then finally in the conclusion I will talk about the importance to mitigate the effects of climate change. That is, it is not about just conserving the nature, it is also about conserving the cultures. So on those lines I will try to end this. So this is how the schematic of my structuring of the answer is going to be. So let us start off with the writing of model answer. So I hope you are ready. So start off with me. So in the introduction we can start by telling that global warming is the cause, and climate change is an effect. Okay, cause and effect. Then you can say global warming is the rise of average temperatures of the earth, due to the addition of greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. This increasing temperature will result in climate change, and one consequence of this change is the melting of glaciers, which results in sea level rise. Now look at this definition. I am trying to show clarity in my geographical concept of global warming and climate change. I am not just sticking up some fact and getting over with. That is the difference between writing in GS1 of geography and writing in GS3 of the same concept of climate change in environment. So I hope you understand this. However, for those people who love fact, in the next paragraph you can write it or you can skip it, not an issue. In the next paragraph you can say, according to IPCC 6th assessment report 2023, the sea level will rise by around 0.4 to 0.8 meters by 2100. Okay, so this is the stat you can write, but I always incline towards writing more conceptually in geography, but definitely you can add fact here and there, not an issue at all. So this is about the introduction. All right, now let us move to the diagram. So this is where you draw the world map. You draw the world map. So you should draw the world map in the matter of just 30 seconds. That is the ability that you have to practice. So drawing the world map, always the map will add the aesthetical value in your answer. Okay, so world map should be drawn under any circumstances. Okay, so this is the world map. Now you can put the vulnerable regions. Look at this. This is Pacific Islands. You can, in brackets, you can say coral islands of Pacific. So here you can name the islands also: Solomon, Fiji, Tuvalu. Okay, so here you can say Caribbean islands. Okay, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, etc. Okay, then here these are the coral islands of Indian Ocean. You can give Lakshadweep, you can give Maldives, you can also say Mauritius. Okay, also there has been cases where some islands along this Bay of Bengal is also undergone sinking. For example, Goramara Islands as well as Ganga Sagar Islands. These are two islands in Sundarbans where it has already undergone sinking, and those people who are living from that islands have already been brought inside the land. These people are called climate refugees. Anyways, it is okay. Let us assume that you did not know that. Overall, you create this diagram and create the title. You should write the title as Vulnerable Island Nations to Sea Level Rise. Okay, so this is how this diagram should be there. Next, let us go to the body of the answer. So now you can address how sea level rise affects island nations. Affects island nations. Okay, here the first one is loss of habitable land. Habitable land. Okay, look at this. You can say most of the island nations have around 1 or 2 meter above sea level. So if sea level rises to even 0.2 meters above sea level, substantial land of these nations are lost due to subduction. Okay, for example, you can take any islands of Pacific Ocean or Indian Ocean and talk. For example, I'll just take Kiribati. For example, Kiribati is already undergoing submergence. Is already undergoing submergence due to its low altitude. Okay, look at this. I have given the example also. Next, second keyword or the second dimension that you can tell is saltwater intrusion. Saltwater intrusion. Here you can say, elaborate this, when the ocean water enters the land or enters the coastal land, the salt water intrudes the fresh water aquifers which are prime sources of drinking water availability in these islands. For example, Maldives is already facing such water scarcity and is in need of more desalination plants. Now look at this. This example I'm writing from common sense. All the islands along the Indian Ocean, for example, you take Lakshadweep, you take Maldives, you take Mauritius, everywhere there is lack of fresh water. So I am assuming that because of sea level rise, that scarcity will even more increase. So that in turn will actually create more necessity for desalinization plants. So with my common sense, I'm writing this example. Not that I've studied in one book or I've typed in some internet and I've searched it and then I'm telling you this. I'm only telling you those things that from common sense and from normal basic knowledge, you'll be able to write the answer. That is the difference of me writing model answers in this Decode Mains 2025. It is not about just researching something. It is about with our common basic knowledge, how can we frame a very good answer? That is what we're trying to do. And this is the second dimension. The third one is threat to agriculture and food security. Threat to agriculture and food security. Look at this. As salt water intrudes the coastal land, the soil suffers from soil salinization and becomes infertile. As the highly productive deltaic soils become infertile, agricultural production drops and food security is threatened. Okay, example, Bangladesh is suffering from soil salinization due to the influx of the salt water into deltaic soils. Now again, look at this. All I was thinking is, which is the nation that is highly populated, which is the nation that is agricultural? I could think of Bangladesh. So in Bangladesh, not only in Bangladesh, in any nation, when the salt water intrudes, the coastal soil will become more saline. It will become infertile. That will affect agriculture. This is common everywhere. I've just taken one nation that will suit this context and put it there and explain the common sense elaboration. This is how you have to elaborate. So this is the third dimension. The fourth one is impact on marine livelihoods. Here you can say, as the sea level rise, coastal flooding, coastal erosion and coral bleaching occurs, which affects not only the fishing community but tourism activities. Okay, again, example, you can talk about Solomon Islands, any island you take, Kiribati Islands and Barbados. Okay, or you can, in general, you can say Caribbean islands. Okay, so this is the fourth dimension. All right, the fifth one is creates a new vulnerable group, climate refugees. Creates a new vulnerable group called climate refugees. Now there was a very famous news. For example, Kiribati purchased land from Fiji. It purchased land from Fiji to relocate some of its population, which was highly vulnerable to sea level rise. That is one. The second, you can also talk about Goramara Island and Sagar Island. Here people are already relocated into mainland into mainland, as these lands are highly vulnerable to sinking due to sea level rise. Look at this. These are some dimensions. These dimensions are more than enough in a 10 marker. So I have written a very good introduction, diagram, and 5 different dimensions with examples. Again, those examples with common sense. Alright. So this is how you can elaborate. Finally, you can come to the conclusion. So finally, in the conclusion, you can say that protecting these vulnerable islands is not just about geography, but also about preserving human rights, cultures, and sovereignty in this Anthropocene era. Alright, so here Anthropocene era means that era from where humans started dominating and changing the configuration of the earth geomorphologically, geologically, climatologically, hydrologically. Okay, so where humans have greater imprints in changing the earth and its functioning and its processes, that is what is called Anthropocene era. So I've used that keyword just to create that impact, but overall I've created an impactful conclusion that can end this answer with a proper positive note. So this is the first answer of our discussion. So I hope it helped you to frame and structure this answer in the language of geography, and also you'll be brought in the diagram to create that value addition. So this completes the 4th question. Let us go on to the 5th question, that is the second question in discussion. Now the 5th question is, what are non-form primary activities? How are these activities related to physiographic features in India? Discuss with suitable examples. Okay, again a straightforward question. So let us create the schema. In the schema, let us talk first in the introduction. What are non-farm activities? So because they have asked the question specifically, look at this. They have asked the question specifically. You have to write a little bit in depth. Okay, so this becomes introduction as well as body. Okay, so what are non-farm activities? I'll give examples and I will draw the India map to show different non-farm economic activities, or non-farm primary activities, primary activities. Okay, so this is the first part. The second part is, I will talk about the second body 2. Here I'll talk about the linkage between this primary activities and physiographic features. Okay, and finally in the conclusion I'll try to link physiographic diversity of India and how that physiographic diversity has created what you call as occupational diversity. Physiographical diversity has created occupational diversity. So this is how our structuring of the answer is going to be. So let us start off with the introduction. So in the introduction, first I will tell what are primary activities, and then I will come to what is non-farm primary activities. So here look at this. Primary activities are those that are directly dependent on natural environment, for raw materials. Next point, non-farm primary activities include non-agricultural activities such as livestock, forestry, mining, quarrying, and fishing. Okay, because they have asked a specific question, what are non-farm primary activities, I'll write one more paragraph about it. In the next paragraph you can say these activities. When I say these activities, I mean fishing, forestry, mining. These activities are dependent on physiographic features such as topography, soil, climate, vegetation, and rock types. You can write many more, but I'm just stopping it here. Okay, so I've given a glimpse of what is non-farm primary activity. Now we have written the first part of the answer. Now draw the diagram. Please don't forget the diagram. So show the diagram of different non-farm primary activities of India. So if you take this, now you can tell this areas. Okay, this area, they are mainly based on forestry. Okay, then this part, okay, this part is mainly based on livestock. Okay, the next is I'll use the same color. Let me use this part, the coastal region of India. They mainly practice fishing. And the last part is this part of India, that is the eastern part of India. They mainly practice mining. Okay, so here you can give the title as non-farm primary activities in India. Look at this. Look how good this value addition is. This is how you have to always, they ask you any phenomena, you have to always show the spatial distribution of that phenomena. Okay, now you can take individually forestry, talk about the physiographic linkages to it. Then you take fishing, talk about the physiographic linkages to it. Mining, physiographic linkage. Livestock, physiographic linkage. Your answer is done. So let us go to that. So the first one is, give the heading as forestry. Here you can talk the distribution. The distribution you can say is Western Himalayas, Eastern Himalayas, and Western Ghats. Next line you can say physiographic features. Physiographic features, you can say one, mountains with softwood trees. Mountains with softwood trees. The second physiographic feature is dense and luxuriant vegetation. Dense and luxuriant vegetation. Okay, so this is the forestry. The next one is livestock rearing. Livestock rearing. Okay, so here you can talk about the distribution. So in the distribution, talk about the arid and semi-arid regions of India. Semi-arid regions of India, such as Thar Desert, Malwa, Bundelkhand, Vidarbha, etc. Okay, now physiographic linkage. Physiographic link is one, availability of grasses. Second, climate. It is a water stress area that allows only pastoralism. This is the physiographic linkage. Okay, the third one you can tell is mining. Okay, so you can tell the distribution. So the distribution can be Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Odisha. Okay, now physiographic linkage. Physiographic linkage is one, it is Gondwana land. So it is very rich in resources, okay, or minerals. Okay, the second is availability of Darwarian rocks. Which is again very rich in minerals. The third is presence of rivers. This has allowed the development of placer deposits. Okay, so this is about mining. The fourth one is fishing. Okay, you can say a long 11,000 kilometer of coastline. Okay, this is the distribution. Okay, that is the east coast and the west coast. Okay, physiographic linkage. Here you can talk about is broad continental shelf. Broad continental shelf. The second is there is mangroves. So these mangroves also attract fishes. And the third is indented coastline. So this indented coastline, this has helped fishing communities. Okay, so this is about the non-farm primary activities. So I hope that you understood. In every primary activity we have discussed about the distribution as well as the physiographic linkage. So let us conclude it. So in the conclusion you can say the physiographic diversity of India in the form of mountains, plateaus and plains has made occupational diversity possible in India, which has helped sustain millions of livelihoods, beyond agriculture. So this is how, in a forward impact, I am trying to link the physiographical linkage with occupational diversity. Okay, or physiographical diversity with occupational diversity. I use the variables, take the variables from the question and use it in my conclusion. I have been teaching you this from the ethics paper, so I hope you are learning the art of using this skill. Okay, so this completes the second question of our discussion, that is fifth question in the series of GS1 Mains 2025. Alright guys, now let us look at the sixth question. Okay, that is the third question in discussion, the sixth question in the series. Okay, sixth question is, explain briefly the ecological and economic benefits of solar energy generation in India with suitable examples. Okay, very direct and straightforward question. So let us get into the schema. Look at this. In the schema, I'll give the introduction. I'll talk about solar energy and India. Okay, next, as I told you, diagram of India and showing the solar energy potential sites. Okay, in the next part I will divide the body into two parts. One is ecological benefits and the second is economic benefits. Okay, this completes the body. The next and the last is conclusion. I'll try to link the conclusion of solar energy with SDG goals. Okay, solar energy with SDG goals. So this is how overall I will try to structure my answer. Alright, let us start off with the introduction. So in the introduction, I always believe in defining the terms that will make it geographical. Instead of telling, many students, they'll just put a fact. For example, National Solar Mission, our ambitious target of 500 gigawatts, and for that solar energy is very important. Or currently our installed capacity is around 80 gigawatts of solar energy and it is increasing at an exponential rate. Something like that they'll start. That is also okay, but I always believe in trying to define. Look at this. Solar energy is a renewable, clean and inexhaustible source of energy derived from the sun. Okay, next point, you can say, with India being a tropical country, receiving 300 to 330 sunny days annually, solar energy has emerged as a crucial driver for sustainable development in India. Okay, look at this. How does this definition sound rather than just giving some statistics of National Solar Mission or Ministry of Renewable Energy? Look at this. This is how, if you read the NCERTs of geography, this is how the answer starts, or the paragraph starts, or the topic starts. That is the cue that you have to take of how to bring that language in that particular paper. Okay, so this is the introduction. Let us jump to the diagram. Okay, as I told you, so next you have to show the distribution of solar energy potential sites in India. So here you can draw the India map. As I told you, to draw the India map or the world map, you will have 30 seconds in the exam. So you should develop the habit of drawing it in 30 seconds. So you have Gujarat, Rajasthan, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu. Look at this. These are the potential sites of solar energy in India. Potential sites of solar energy in India. So this is the value addition that has to come. So this completes the diagram. Let us jump to the body. Okay, so the first part that we'll be addressing is the ecological benefits. The ecological benefits. So here the first one is reduction of carbon emissions. Reduction of carbon emissions. You can elaborate the generation of electricity. The generation of electricity from solar power involves no burning of fossil fuel, and hence no greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, this is the first point. The second one is mitigation of air pollution. So here you can say burning of fossil fuels emit gases such as nitrous oxide and sulfuric oxide, which are significant threat to human health. Okay, the third one is conservation of water. Generation of solar energy requires minimum or no water compared to the water needed in coal or nuclear plants. In addition, floating solar panels in reservoirs in Telangana and Kerala has helped reduce evaporation losses and save water. Fourth one is land sustainability. So here you can say solar panels installed on barren and arid lands help protect the land from soil erosion as well as desertification. Okay, so these are the ecological benefits of solar energy. Let us now move on to economic benefits. Alright, so the next is economic benefits. So in the economic benefits, the first one you can say is energy security. Okay, as here you can elaborate telling that solar energy provides India an alternative and sustainable energy source, and in turn helps us reduce dependence on crude oil, which are mainly imported, and their supply is subjected to world geopolitics. Okay, so this is one. The second one you can say is balance of trade. Here you can say reducing dependence on crude oil will help reduce our import bill, as we are one of the largest importers of crude oil in the world. Okay, so this is the second economic benefit. The third one is employment generation. Okay, here you can say that solar industry creates jobs in manufacturing, installation and maintenance. Example, PM Suryodaya Yojana promotes rooftop solar panels, which in turn helps develop large scale employment. Okay, the fourth one is decentralized power. Okay, here you can say micro solar grids help achieve accessibility of energy to remote villages. Also, since the cost of solar power from these microgrids are cheaper, it also becomes more affordable. Look at this, how I have generated dimensions and I am able to link it back to solar energy and its benefit. Alright, now look at this. This completes the economical benefits. So ecological is done, economical is done. Let us go to the conclusion. So in the conclusion, we can conclude by linking it to SDG. You can say solar generation will help align India's goals with SDG 7, that is clean and affordable energy, and SDG 13, that is climate action. Okay, full stop. You can continue telling solar energy therefore is not only ecological imperative in India, but also an economic opportunity to achieve growth with sustainable development. Look at this. This is a forward-looking conclusion that you can write in this particular question. So I hope you understood how, in a very simplistic way, with using common sense, you can structure a very good answer for such questions. So I hope you enjoyed this, guys. Let us move on to the next one. Alright guys, now let us look at the 7th question. Okay, the 7th question is as follows. What are tsunamis? How and where are they formed? What are their consequences? Explain with examples. Now, as you can see, they have only given the different demands that you have to address within your answer. Okay, so let us create a schema. The answer is straightforward. So first you are going to talk about what are tsunamis. Okay, then you are talking about how are they formed. Then you are talking about where are they formed, and the next is what are the consequences. So look at this. They themselves have given the structure. Okay, and while you are explaining this, you have to create examples, or you have to use examples. So if you can do this, automatically the answer will have the flow. Okay, so introduction, you can talk about what is tsunami and elaborate on that. Conclusion, I would always like to tell, whenever they ask about a disaster, I would always like to end with disaster management. How are we managing the disaster? So when they ask about cloudburst, in a conclusion you can say, how can we mitigate the effects of cloudburst? So now since they're asking about tsunami, you can talk about how we can mitigate the effect of tsunami. Obviously, tsunami is a natural phenomena. It is not a man-made phenomena. So you cannot stop tsunamis, but you can mitigate the effects of tsunami. That is, you can reduce the loss of life and property by taking necessary precautions. So that is what is known as mitigation. So this is the overall schematic that I would like to create for the flow of my answer. Again, a straightforward one. So let us start with it. Now again, in this question, look at the language and look at the diagrams and learn how exactly to bring geographical answers in GS1. Okay. So let us start off with the introduction. So in the introduction, let us start by defining what is tsunami. You can say tsunami is a Japanese word. Tsunami is a Japanese word which means arbor waves. Next point. Tsunami is mainly formed due to underwater disturbances that displaces the oceanic water. Next point. When the oceanic water is displaced, the water tries to attain equilibrium and thus releases large oceanic seismic waves. Next paragraph. These large oceanic seismic waves will reach the continental shelf and break to transform its long wavelength into wave height. In bracket you can say usually 30 to 100 meters wave height, which is then called as tsunamis. Now we have explained what are tsunamis. Now give the diagram. The diagram will actually substantiate what you're trying to tell. Okay. So here you can talk about, diagrams are very, very important. Okay. So you can talk about how tsunamis are formed. So this is the ocean bed. Okay. Now if I take this as the sea level, this is the sea level. Okay. Now if I assume that there is underwater disturbances, let us say that this is the underwater disturbances. When these underwater disturbances displace the oceanic water tries to attain equilibrium. So when it tries to attain equilibrium, look at this, large oceanic seismic waves are created. So these large oceanic seismic waves, when they come in contact with the continental shelf, they will stand to form. These are known as tsunamis. Okay, and these are large oceanic seismic waves. Okay, see, that is why tsunamis are known as arbor waves. It is seen near the arbor, that's why they are known as arbor waves. Anyways, large oceanic seismic waves, when the wavelength converts into wave height, they become tsunami. Okay, so this is the first part. So we have addressed what is tsunami. Whenever you write the diagram, you should always give the title. Here you should say tsunami formation. Okay, now the second part is how are they formed. So let us go to the next paragraph and give the heading as how are tsunamis formed. Okay, so here you should give the reason how are they formed. Here the first point you should say is tsunamis are mainly triggered by underwater disturbances, and these underwater disturbances can be created due to following reasons. Can be created due to following reasons. So here the first one and the most dominant reason is earthquakes. Earthquakes due to plate tectonics. Earthquakes due to plate tectonics. The underwater earthquakes are mainly observed in converging plate boundaries along the Pacific Ring of Fire and in Indian Ocean Okay, example you can give is 2025 Kamchatka Peninsula in 2025, that is this year, triggered underwater earthquakes which triggered tsunamis near Hawaiian Islands. Because they have explained with examples, so elaborating those examples are very important. So I have given example. Alright, so this is the main and the dominant reason. Okay, the second one is collapse of land into ocean. When I say land, collapse of mountain top. You can say collapse of mountain top into ocean. Here you can say when the mountain top collapses, it displaces oceanic water which can trigger tsunamis. Example you can say is 1883 Krakatoa mountain top collapsing and triggering tsunamis in Indonesia. Okay, the third one is underwater landslides and volcanic eruptions. Okay, such activities cause low scale displacement creating low magnitude tsunamis. So the third reason is not that significant. The most important reason why tsunamis happen is earthquakes due to plate tectonics. The second is collapse of mountaintop into oceans. Okay, so these are the three main reasons. So we have discussed what, we have discussed how. The next is where. Again, where just by writing 2-3 places in English will not do. You have to draw the diagram. As I've already told you, drawing the world map is very, very important, and you should develop the skill to draw world map. When I say draw world map, it is not only useful for geography, but you will be using this art of drawing the world map even in the paper 2 of international relations as well as in internal security. Okay, so as much as you can draw the world map, it is a very good skill to have. Okay, so let us say that this is the world map, and now I have to show what are all the regions that are highly vulnerable. Look at this specific ring of fire. This is highly vulnerable. So Pacific ring of fire. Okay, the next is this part. Okay, this is the Indian Ocean. Okay, this is the Indian Ocean. That is convergence of Indian plate and Burmese plate. Okay, so these are the two regions that account for 85% of tsunamis in the world. Okay, look at this. This is actually 75% and this is actually 10 to 15%. So almost 85 to 90% of the tsunamis that happen in these regions. Okay, so here you can tell 2004 tsunami. Here you can say this is the Kamchatka Peninsula. 2025 tsunami. Okay, so that reached the Hawaiian Island. So this is how we are addressing the where part. So what, how and where is done. So finally, let us move to the last part, that is what are their consequences. Okay, so whenever they say consequences, think laterally. Look at this. The consequences can be humanitarian, it can be ecological, it can be economical, or it can be how it can add pollutant, okay, or destruction. So this is how you can talk. So first, so I'm talking about the consequences. So in the consequences, we will talk about the first is humanitarian consequences. Humanitarian consequences. So in humanitarian consequences, you can say tsunamis displace large scale coastal communities, and results in enormous loss of life. For example, 2004 tsunami killed around 2 lakh people in 14 countries. Obviously, this stat you would have learned in disaster management. You are trying to use it here. Okay. The second one is ecological cost or consequences. Here you can say tsunamis can trigger coastal erosion. It can trigger coastal erosion and also salinization of coastal soil and groundwater. Example, Indira Point, the southernmost point of India in Great Nicobar was completely submerged due to tsunamis. Okay. The third one is economical consequences. So here you can elaborate and tell that tsunamis destroy infrastructure, energy plants, fisheries, ports and harbors, and can collapse an economy of island nations. Okay. Example, 2004 tsunami almost collapsed the economy of Sri Lanka. Okay. The fourth one is pollution risk. Here you can say most of our nuclear reactors are located along the coastline, which can melt down due to tsunamis. Example, the 2011 Fukushima nuclear meltdown. Look at this. I have, in a very simplified way, talked about the consequences. Whatever knowledge I have in disaster management, I have taken it and put it in this particular answer. Okay. Finally, in the conclusion, I'll talk about an institution that has played a very, very important role in Indian Ocean in spreading the early warning system in the entire nations of Indian Ocean, not only India. Look at this. In conclusion, I'll talk about INCOIS, Indian National Center for Ocean Information Studies. INCOIS has helped develop a robust early warning system network for all the littoral countries of Indian Ocean. and hence has played a critical role in forecasting tsunamis in Indian Ocean. So this is how I would like to conclude. So every part of the question I have taken, I have added three points that itself will complete the entire answer, and because they themselves in the question, I have subdivided the question in different ways. Just addressing those questions itself will create the flow. So I hope you enjoyed this and you understood how to bring diagrams and create language of geography to actually write answers in geography. So I hope that this was indicative, as well as you can use this as a reference for you to practice in the next geography questions that you write. So this completes the 10 marker. Let us now move on to the 15 marker. Alright guys, now let us start with the 15 marker. Now one challenge in geography in 15 marker is they'll always frame the question in such a way that to write 3 sides of 15 marker will be a little difficult. That is why you should always not try to fill the page just for the sake of it. Otherwise what happens, you will go away from the demand of the question. But how can you actually create that content is by bringing in a lot of diagrams. Okay, so that is how you can create the content in 15 marker. Okay, anyways, let me go on with the first 15 marker, that is the 14th question. As I told you, 14th question is a little tricky. So with whatever sense we have how to write the answer, look at this, this is how it goes. Give a geographical explanation of the distribution of offshore oil reserves of the world. How are they different from the onshore occurrences of oil reserves? Okay, so let us first create the schematic. So in the schematic or in the schema, first I will talk in the introduction. What are offshore oil reserves and what are onshore oil reserves and how are they developed? Okay, so this I will talk in the first part. The next part I will talk about, look at this, they have asked about give the geographical explanation of distribution of offshore oil reserves. Okay, so here in reality how you should write is, you have to draw the world map. You have to show different offshore reserves, and you have to geographically explain why those offshore reserves are there. So if you take Persian Gulf, you have to explain why is it there. If you take the West Africa, you have to explain why is it there. If you take the Caribbean islands or the Gulf of Mexico, you have to explain why is it there. So like that, every offshore reserves that you take, you have to explain why is it there. But the problem with this is the explanation of why is it there becomes redundant, because everywhere the causes or the explanation is more or less the same. So what I would advise you to do is in the body. So this is the introduction. So we have done the introduction. So in the body, so first I will give the heading as distribution of offshore reserves. I will draw the world map. After drawing the world map and showing the different offshore reserves, then I will give the heading as geographical explanation. Then I'll give the heading as geographical explanation and then give the geographical explanation of offshore reserves. So this is how I would like to divide the answer to avoid redundancy. Okay. Now after this, so we have addressed 1, 2. The third part is you have to write the difference between offshore oil reserves and onshore oil reserves. Okay. So you have to write the difference. Now here, this is where I will teach you what you call as lateral thinking. Many people will not write the difference thinking that I should know the technicalities of offshore and onshore oil reserves, but it is not true. Just by knowing the lateral way of thinking between the difference, you can actually write a very good difference. This I will teach once we get there. Okay. So you understood the schematic. First we are going to write the introduction, then the body, and then the difference, and finally we can conclude. We can conclude by talking about the uneven distribution of oil reserves and how that is playing a significant role in global geopolitics. Okay, so this is how we can start off. So let us start off with the introduction. So in the introduction, I'll talk about onshore oil reserves are petroleum and natural gas reserves found in the sedimentary basins, within the continent. Sedimentary basins within the continent. Okay. The next, offshore oil reserves are petroleum and natural gas reserves that are found that are found in the continental shelves. That are found in the continental shelves. Okay. Now, formation. Here you can say petroleum and natural gas are mainly formed in the basins. They are mainly formed in the basins. That is one. They are mainly formed due to fossilization of marine microorganisms. Okay. Third one, when the marine microorganisms die and are buried within the basins, they are cut off from oxygen. So decomposition is retarded. And fossilization continues. Okay. Next point you can say, after several millions of years, these fossils at right temperature and pressure will form petroleum and natural gas. Look at this. So this is the formation. Now I will give you the diagram. Look at this. On one side you can say offshore oil reserves. Now let me show in a diagram how the formation happens. So let us say this is the basin. In the basin you have, let us say, different rocks. There is different rocks, and let us say that there is marine microorganisms that gets settled here, or they die and come and get settled here. Okay, these marine microorganisms are further covered by rocks, so they are cut off from oxygen. Look at this, they are cut off from oxygen. So you can tell that these are marine organisms which fossilize to form petroleum and natural gas. Now see, look at this. So assume that this is offshore. Now if I have to show onshore oil reserves. Now if I take this as the basin, okay, let us say from the basin the rocks have folded. See, from the basin the rocks have folded to form so this is the rocks. Okay, the rocks have folded to form sedimentary basins. So this is sedimentary basins on land. Why is it on land? Because it has risen above the sea level. So this is the sea level, it has risen above the sea level. Now this marine organisms which are fossilized to form petroleum and natural gas, they are very lighter than water. Because they are very lighter than water, they will rise and they will start depositing like this. Look at this, they will start depositing like this. So they'll start depositing like this, and below that there will be sedimentary rocks again. Look at this. So this uplifting of the sediment from the basin is what is known as anticline. This is anticline. Syncline will always be depression, anticline will always be uplifting part. Okay, so this anticline will always have what you call as petroleum and natural gas. Okay, for example, a very good example is Zagros folding. Zagros folding is a mountain in West Asia that has this type of anticlines that will have petroleum reserves. Or you can take the example of Digboy in Assam. Digboy in Assam is also an onshore oil reserves. Okay, so you have learned through diagrams how offshore oil reserves and onshore oil reserves are formed. Okay, so this is a diagram that shows clarity. That's what I told. With common sense, if we know that fossilization of microorganisms happen in basins inside the water is offshore oil reserves. When the basins come out of the sea level and become sedimentary basins, then it becomes onshore oil reserves. This is the clarity that you have to show. Alright, so we have shown the first part, that is what is oil reserves, what is onshore offshore oil reserves, how is it formed. Now let us go to the second part, that is you have to give the distribution. You have to give the distribution of offshore oil reserves. Distribution of offshore oil reserves. Okay, again the distribution can be easily shown with the help of the world map. That is why drawing the world map and having that ability to draw the world map is very, very important. Okay, so let me just quickly draw the world map. As I keep telling you, you should practice to draw this in less than 30 seconds. Okay, so you have, so here you can show, look at this. Okay, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4, this is 5, this is 6, this is 7, this is 8. Okay, now name it. Okay, here you can name it as 1 continental shelf of Indonesia, second Krishna Godavari basin, third Mumbai High, fourth continental shelf of Persian Gulf, fifth continental shelf of African nations in Mediterranean Sea, sixth is continental shelf of West African nations, seventh is Gulf of Mexico, and the eighth is, you can take here the North Sea. Okay, here you have the United Kingdom, so here you have the North Sea. So eighth you can take the North Sea, and ninth you can also take here these places. So ninth, this is the new reserves that are found due to the melting of the Arctic. So the Arctic Ocean. Okay, so this is how you show the different occurrences of offshore oil reserves. Again, by understanding where you have broader continental shelf, with that spatial knowledge you will be able to draw this diagram. Again, it is not that difficult. Okay, now coming to the next part, that is explaining geographical explanation of offshore oil reserves. Okay, so here you should say offshore oil reserves are always found within the following geographical advantages. Okay, the first one is broad continental shelf. Okay, here you should say very high sedimentation will increase scope of fossilization. Okay, the second one you should say is very rich marine life, because oil reserves are formed due to fossilization of marine organisms. Okay, third one is tectonic stability. Here you can say stability is important for burial to happen without disturbances. If burial is disturbed, then fossilization process comes to a standstill. Fossilization process comes to a standstill. Alright, now we have examined the geographical distribution and also given geographical explanation. Now let us go to the last part. The last part is how are they different from onshore occurrences of oil reserves. Okay, now look at this. I will divide the sheet. I will draw on one side oil reserves. This is onshore, and oil reserves, this is offshore. Okay, so here I'll say first one. See, think laterally. Where are onshore oil reserves formed? They are mainly formed over anticline sedimentary basins. Okay, where are offshore oil reserves formed? They are mainly found within the continental shelves. Okay, second one, give examples. Example is, you can talk about Big Boy or Nahar Katia. These are oil reserves in Assam, India. Okay, here you can give example of KG Basin, Mumbai High. There is Ankaleshwar, Kalol, all those things. This much is enough. This is again India. Okay, you can give other offshore reserves also. Since I have shown them in the world map, I am trying to give Indian specific examples. Okay, the next one, the third difference is, if I talk about accessibility. Okay, now onshore, this is onshore, this is offshore. So if I talk about onshore, accessibility is easy as it is available from drilling. Okay, here if you take offshore, then accessibility is difficult and requires advanced technology. Okay, so this is the third one. The fourth one, think of cost of operation. Obviously, if accessibility is easy, cost of operation is low. Accessibility is difficult, cost of operation is high. So here you can say cost of operations is relatively low. Here, fourth one, cost of operations is high as it requires high technology and manpower. Now the next one is ecological cost. Okay, so look at this. What will it have? The cost on ecology with respect to onshore drilling can cause land degradation and groundwater contamination. If you take the offshore reserves, it can result in oil spills. The best example is 2010 Deep Horizon oil spill. There's a movie also made on this. Anyways, this is oil spills. Oil spills can threaten the entire marine ecosystem. Look at this. I have written the differences between offshore and onshore only by thinking laterally. I don't have to know the technicalities except how are they formed. With the knowledge of how are they formed, I am able to write the differences. This is how you should develop that lateral thinking of what can be the difference from economic angle, from technological angle, from ecological angle, and pollution or risk angle. So this is how you have to always develop lateral thinking when they ask you such differentiation in geography. So I hope this was helpful. Alright. So finally, let us come to the conclusion. So in the conclusion, you can talk about the uneven distribution of oil reserves in the world as influenced the global geopolitics, geoeconomics, and maritime policies of the world. Look at this. This is how we can conclude. Again, it may seem a little difficult, but you just have to use some presence of mind. But I can understand all the students who are writing there in the mains exam wouldn't have written so detailedly. It is completely okay. Don't worry about it. This is not exactly how you could have written in the exam. That is not what I'm trying to tell. This is only to show those students who are aspiring to write in 2026 mains how to exactly create an answer with just some knowledge that you have about onshore oil reserves and offshore oil reserves. Okay, so I hope this was helpful, guys. Let us go on to the next one. Alright guys, now let us look at the 15th question. If you read the 15th question, let me first read it out. How can artificial intelligence and drones be effectively used along with GIS and RS techniques in locational and aerial planning? Okay, so basically here they have used 4 variables. One is GIS, RS, artificial intelligence and drones. Okay, so actually when they increase the number of variables asked in the question, it actually simplifies the number of points that you have to write. All you have to write is, here you have to just write 3 points, 3 points, 3 points, 3 points. Overall the answer is done. Okay, but how do you structure it? That is where the entire skill is dependent upon. Now, this question is asked from application geography 1. Many people may seem that this particular question is difficult, but it is not so. Application geography requires you to apply whatever knowledge you have in all the general studies paper and just make it seem like it is geography. For example, if you take GIS and RS, that is Geographical Information System and Remote Sensing, you just have to talk how first these two will help in aerial planning. It can be with respect to urban traffic management, it can be with respect to freight movement across different states, or it can be with respect to disaster management. So that is the first part that you have to talk. So once you have spoken about this GIS and RS, how it helps in aerial planning, then go on to the next part of the variables, that is artificial intelligence and drones, and you should tell how artificial intelligence will enhance this RS and GIS. The second part you should tell how drones will enhance the effectiveness of this GIS and RS. So that is how you have to address. So everywhere if you add just 3 points, more or less the answer will be done. Let me just create a schematic for you to understand whatever I've just told you. So the schematic is, so the schema is like this. In the introduction, because they've used variables like this, or because they've used technical terms, I'll define what is GIS, what is RS. Okay, then I will tell about application of GIS and RS in aerial planning. GIS and RS in aerial planning. So here I'll write few points. Then I'll talk about how AI and drones have increased effectiveness of aerial planning. Okay, and finally I'll conclude by talking about all the 4 variables. Okay, so this is the flow. I will use those variables, and only with that variables I'll try to structure the answer. That is the smartness that you have to use. So whenever in the question they use lot of variables, you should not be afraid. You should actually take advantage of that. Okay, so this is the schematic. So let us jump right to the answer. Alright, so in the introduction, as I told you, in the introduction I'll try to define what is GIS, Geographical Information System, is the spatial analysis of an area using thematic maps such as temperature maps, soil maps, vegetation maps, infrastructure maps, etc. Okay, this is what is known as Geographical Information System. Spatial analysis using thematic maps. These maps can be layered on top of one another. Okay, that is another advantage of Geographical Information System. Next, what is remote sensing? Remote sensing, as you see, sensing remotely about an area. That is what is remote sensing. That is acquisition or acquiring information about an area remotely without physical contact of that area, using sensors from satellites or aircrafts. So this is what is known as remote sensing. So I have defined what is GIS and what is remote sensing with basic knowledge and common sense. Alright, now let me then address how GIS and RS is used in locational and aerial planning. Locational and aerial planning. Okay, so here the first point I will write is urban development. Urban development. Here you can elaborate by telling GIS and RS is used for land use zoning, site selection for infrastructure projects, and smart city layouts. It is more or less similar to green zoning the city. Okay, the second one is disaster management. GIS and RS will help map and zoning of cyclone prone areas, flood prone areas, earthquake risk areas, etc. Okay, this is with respect to disaster management. The third one, you can say environmental monitoring. Here you can say tracking deforestation, desertification, coastal erosion, as well as groundwater depletion. Okay, the fourth, you can go on telling, but 4 points are enough. Agriculture, monitoring cropping pattern and crop health. You can also say monitoring irrigation coverage. See, you can go on telling different things, but this is more than enough. So I have addressed how GIS and RS can be helpful. Now the second part is I can address how artificial intelligence can enhance aerial planning. Along with GIS and RS. Again, here you can add 2 or 3 points. In the next one, you can say how drones can enhance aerial planning, 2 or 3 points. Your answers will be done. Alright, so now under this, the first point is you can talk about processing. You can say large data sets received from remote sensing can be processed by artificial intelligence to understand pattern recognition. This can help stop illegal encroachment of land or activities such as mining or quarrying that can be environmentally detrimental. Okay, so this is regarding processing. Okay, the one more aspect importance of artificial intelligence is prediction. That is, it will create predictive models. So here predictive models are more important in disaster management, forecasting. Example, cyclones, floods, cloudburst. Okay, predictive models can also be used in aerial planning of transport infrastructure. For smooth flow of traffic. Look at this. So that's all. Elaborating this is more than enough. Now go to the next one. How drones will help in aerial planning along with GIS and RS. Here again 2 keywords. Drones are always used in monitoring and accessibility. Okay, so use those two keywords and write. That is what I keep telling you. This is the play of keywords. If you know the keywords, you can put that keywords in the context of the question that is asked. Now look at this. First, I'll tell accessibility. Drones give access to remote sensing in areas that are not accessible. In areas that are not accessible by satellites. This helps in getting high resolution imagery in highly inaccessible terrain. Look at this. This is accessibility. The next one. Second one is monitoring. Drones help in continuous real-time monitoring of a region. This is helpful in aerial planning along border areas. Along border areas where security is the highest concern. Look at this. So I have used the variables of GIS, RS, I have elaborated the points on them. I have used the variables of artificial intelligence and drones, and I have elaborated the points on them. Everywhere I have just thought about how to apply the technology in aerial planning, and I have written points. This is how you have to use the keywords and apply the knowledge to write a proper answer. Finally, I would just add a case study because it's a 15 marker. You can take any government program that is involving in aerial planning and you can use it and tell all these technologies are being used. You can do that. That is common sense. So I can take smart cities mission and tell how the GIS, artificial intelligence, the drones are all used in order to aerially map the urban areas so that it can help in coordinating activities such as transport infrastructure, urban waste management, etc. Or I can take PM Fasal Bima Yojana and I can say that these technologies are used in order to understand the crop loss, in order to decide the compensation that has to be given. Or I can take PM Kusum scheme and also tell that these technologies are used to find best places within the farmland where solar pumps and solar panels can be placed. Look at this. I can use any program that is involved in aerial mapping and tell that these technologies are being useful. That smartness should come, and that will come only with a lot of answer writing. Okay. So in this case study, now I'll take is smart cities mission. So I'll write case study smart cities mission. So I'll just elaborate this. Okay. So in smart cities mission, you can say use of AI, drones, GIS is being done to map traffic, basic services, and it also helps city planners map transport, waste management, urban sprawl, and rural urban fringe. Look at this. I use these keywords in order to make it more geographical. So this is the case study that I was talking about. Finally, we have completed the answer. Let us write the conclusion. All right. So let us go to the conclusion. So in the conclusion, you can say use of AI, drones, GIS and RS techniques in aerial planning helps make Indian development trajectory more sustainable, participatory and equity based in major domains of the economy such as urban planning, agriculture and disaster management. Okay, so this is how we can conclude it with a positive note. So you understood that greater the variables that they use in the question, the better for you, because you can use the same variables and create 3 points or 2 points everywhere, and you can complete the answer with proper flow. So whenever they ask you a lot of questions within the question, it is easy for you to answer. Whenever they ask you a lot of variables within the question, it is easy for you to answer, provided that you have practiced a lot of answer writing. And I hope this is the skill that you're going to take by writing the answers along with me. So I hope that this was helpful, guys. Let us move on to the next question then. Okay guys, now let us look at the 16th question. Let me first read out the question. The question is, discuss how the changes in shape and sizes of continents and ocean basins of the planet takes place due to tectonic movements of the crustal masses. Alright, so basically what they are asking you is, they are asking you the entire theory of plate tectonics. So they want you to write the entire theory of plate tectonics, but instead of asking you directly that, they have asked you what are the changes happening in the continents and the ocean basins due to tectonic movements. That is what they are asking indirectly. So overall, again, the problem here is students will have a lot of content to write, so don't dump all the contents. Create a structure and maintain the structure throughout the answer. Okay, now how will you create the structure? Through the schematic. So let us start with the schematic. So in the schematic, I'll define what is plate and what is tectonics. I'll define what is plate and what is tectonics, and what does plate tectonics theory tell about the formation of continents and oceans. So in a glimpse, I'll try to give the introduction, the definition of what is plates, what is tectonics, and what is plate tectonics. Okay, so that is what I'm going to talk in the introduction. As I told you, in geography, the best approach to always start off with is to define the terms that are given in the question. Okay, then in the body, so first I will talk about the changes in the ocean basin, the changes in the ocean basins. Okay, so here all I'm doing is I'm talking about diverging plate boundary. Instead of giving the subheading as diverging plate boundary, I'm going to give the subheading as changes in ocean basin due to plate movements. Now see, I'm just using the subheadings to suit the context and the keywords given in the question. Otherwise, the subheading should be divergent plate boundary, and you will write exactly what happens in the divergent plate boundary. Okay, so the first part of the body, I'll talk about changes in ocean basin due to plate movements. The second, I'll talk about changes in continents due to plate movements. Okay, here I'm going to talk about converging plate boundaries. Obviously, in the converging plate boundaries, you are going to explain the O and O convergence, the O and C convergence, and as well as C and C convergence. Again, as you can see, there is too much to write, so don't get overwhelmed. You should know how to make it crispier and how to filter out unwanted things and just mention what exactly they've asked. And they've asked this shape and size of continents and ocean basins, how they change on the basis of plate movements. So that is what we'll be focusing on. Okay. Then in the conclusion, we can say understanding the plate movements is not only for academic interest, but also understanding the plate movement is very, very important for disaster management. For any type of disasters such as earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, formation of tsunamis, we have to know the plate movements very well, and understanding the plate movements will help us to predict, forecast, and take effective measures to mitigate the effects of such disasters. So this is how, in a forward-looking manner, I'd like to conclude this answer. Okay, now we have created the schematic. We will stick to the schematic when we are writing the answer, so that we don't digress or we don't get overwhelmed and start writing unnecessary things. Okay, so this is the schema. I hope you understood this. Let us now start writing the answer. All right, now let us start off with the introduction. So in the introduction, you can say plate means lithosphere blocks, lithospheric blocks, and tectonics. And tectonics means movement. Okay, next paragraph, you can say the study of movements of crustal masses, and its associated geophysical phenomenon is known as plate tectonics. Okay, next paragraph, you can say according to plate tectonics theory, according to plate tectonics theory, all changes in shape and size of continents, all changes in shape and size of continents and ocean basins occur along the plate boundaries. Okay. In general, plate tectonics theory says that all geophysical phenomena, it can be mountains, it can be ridges, it can be trenches, it can be islands. So any phenomena that happens, irrespective of in the ocean or in the land, it will always happen in the plate boundary. But I am just explaining it taking the context of the question. That is why, according to plate tectonics theory, I've used the words of the question. All changes in the shape and size of the continents and ocean basins occur along the plate boundaries. This is how you have to smartly take the keywords and add it to your answers. Now we are done with the introduction. Let us go to the body. As we discussed in the schematic, first I'm going to talk about the changes in ocean basin. The changes in ocean basin due to plate movements. The changes in ocean basin due to plate movements. Okay. Here you can say the first statement you have to say is the changes in ocean basins. The changes in the ocean basins occur along the divergent plate boundaries. Okay. Next point you can say along this boundary occurs in four stages, and they are the first one is intracrustal thinning. Okay, here you can say the crustal part of the continent is subjected to magma, and it thins and become weaker. Okay, here you can show the diagram. This is the crustal mass. Okay, this is the crustal mass, and this is the magma that is constantly heating the crustal mass. So that will result in, look at this. This is what is the thinning. Okay, so this is the first stage. Okay, so we have told four stages. So this is the stage 1. Okay, let us go to the next stage. The next stage is stage 2. Stage 2. This stage is known as rifting. Here you can say the thinned part of crustal mass becomes weaker and finally subsides to form rift. Here you have to draw the diagram. Look at this. So this is the thinned part of the Pangea. The Pangea has several cracks within it, and this is the magma that is going like this. Okay, so finally what happens, the thinned part will subside. Okay, so if I take the thinned part, let me show you with this. So this is the upstanding part, and the thinned part will subside. Look at this, the thinned part will subside. Now this thinned part will still have a lot of weaknesses, and there is magma that is going like this, but when the thinned part subsides, this is what is known as a rift. You can show the example of Africa also here. So you can show the East African Rift Valley. So this is the East African Rift Valley. This is where the continent or the crustal mass has subsided. So this is the second stage. The second stage is rifting. Okay, let us go to the third stage. Stage 3. You can say formation of ridges. Here you can say the subsided part of the crustal mass, is fractured, and through these fractures, the magma enters and erupts onto the surface. Enters and erupts onto the surface. Enters and erupts onto the surface. Okay. Since the magma type is basic, they form ridges. Look at this. Now draw this diagram. So you have to show that these are the upstanding part. Okay, and this is the subsided part. And I told you that through the weaknesses, the magma will erupt outside. When the magma erupts outside, it will result in the formation of ridges. Okay, this is stage 3. Now let us look at stage 4. Now if you look at stage 4 is the climax of formation of a new ocean. Look at this. Stage 4, you can say, according to seafloor spreading by area S, whenever there is new event of eruption along the ridges, the older rocks are pushed aside. This will result in the formation of a new oceanic crust and a new ocean. Okay, so here show it through the diagram. So you can draw two upstanding part, then you can show there is a ridge here. Okay, then you can show this as the continental part, and you can show the new ocean that is formed here. Look at this. From the ridges, this is the ridge that was formed. How the ridge was formed, I have just shown you in the previous stage. So from this ridge, whenever there is eruption that happens, the newer eruption will always push the older rocks aside. This will result in the formation of a new oceanic crust, or oceans. So look at this. This is what happens along the diverging plate boundary. So as per our subheading, which we wrote as the changes in ocean basins due to plate movements, so we have substantiated it. Okay, we have shown different changes in the shapes and sizes along the oceans, especially along the divergent plate boundary. This completes the first part. Now let us go to the changes in the shape and sizes of continents due to plate movements. Okay, that is the second part as we saw in the schema. So you can give the heading as changes in continents due to plate movements. Here the first point you should say is such changes in shape and size of continents will always occur along the converging plate boundaries. Okay, now this is the first point. The second point you have to write is according to plate tectonics. The first supercontinent was created around 3 billion years ago. When the earth started to cool down. From its molten state. Okay, so you can show the earth here. So the earth is completely in the molten state. So when the earth is in the molten state, now all the minerals that are very dense are going down and all the minerals that are very light are going up. Okay, so here you can show like this. All the minerals that are very light are going up. So lighter minerals rising. Okay, so you can then show it like this. Cooling, the earth is cooling. So when the earth is cooling, look at this, it forms at the outermost layer of the earth. There is the first supercontinent that is formed. This is the first supercontinent that is formed because the outermost layer will start getting solidified. solidified, and this constitutes the lightest rocks. This constitutes the lightest rocks on earth. Okay, and this is what is known as primitive Pangea. Primitive Pangea. And then you can say here, this supercontinent that was created by the lightest minerals on earth, can never be destroyed, as they do not subduct. Okay, so now you have explained how the primitive Pangea is formed. After this, the next is you have to explain the different types of convergence, that is ocean and ocean, ocean and continent and continent. Now in the next page you can write convergent plate boundary or convergence plate boundary can be observed in three combinations. Okay, here the first combination that we will be seeing is ocean and ocean convergence. So here you can say example is Pacific plate and Japanese plate. So you can say along this convergence, the size of the ocean reduces, and there is formation of island arcs. Okay, all right, so now let us draw the diagram and show the changes. So you can say on this side, you can say this is the Japanese plate, and this is the Pacific plate. The subducting is the Pacific plate, and you can say that at this point the plate melts, the magma rises, it hits and fractures this plate and results in the formation of volcanic mountains. And at this point along the trenches, this is the trench, along the trenches there is sedimentation. This sedimentation will fold to form fold mountains. Okay, so these are the two landforms that will form. Now when this volcanic mountain and fold mountain keep rising, as it rises, when it reaches above the sea level, it becomes what you call as volcanic islands if this is the sea level. And if the volcanic mountain rises, as well as if this fold mountain rises above the sea level, then look at this, this becomes continental island, and this becomes volcanic island. Below the sea level it was known as volcanic mountains, and this was known as fold mountains. Okay, so look at this. In one diagram you have shown so many different landforms. Okay, you can also add this diagram. This diagram is also very good. So you can show like this. These are nothing but island arcs. So here you can name them as, this is Aleutian Island Arc. This is Japanese Island Arc. This is the Philippines Island Arc. And this is the Indonesian Island Arc. Okay, so this is a separate diagram that you can show. As I told you, geography should be having abundant amount of diagrams. The more the diagrams, the better marks you get. The only thing is you should not push in the diagrams. It should always be organically done. Okay, so this is along ocean and ocean convergence. The second combination that we can see is ocean and continent convergence. Okay, so we saw ocean and ocean convergence. So now let us see ocean and continent convergence. Okay, here also you can say along this plate boundary, the oceanic crust gets destroyed. Along the zone of subduction, and hence and hence the size of the oceans reduces. The size of the oceans reduces. However, there is formation of volcanic mountains and a special type of fold mountain. A special type of fold mountain called cordilleras on the continents, on the continental plate. On the continental plate. Again, we can show the diagram. So here you can say the example is Nazca plate. Nazca plate is oceanic plate and South America plate. South America plate is continental plate. So here you can show the diagram. So this is, let us assume, the Nazca plate. Nazca plate. It is the oceanic plate and it is the one that will subduct. Okay. The next is on this side is the North American plate. North American plate. Okay. So this part is what you call as trenches. This is the trenches. So now, as I told you, this plate will start getting destroyed. It becomes magma. The magma goes up. It hits this plate and starts forming what you call as volcanic mountains. Volcanic mountains. And if you take the trenches, along the trenches, look at this. On one side you have the sediments coming from the continents. On the other side you have the sediments coming from the oceans. So when both of this fold, look at this, when both of this fold, it will form a special type of fold mountain. This is a special type of fold mountain made up of both the sediments from the oceanic basin as well as the sediment from the continental basin. So this is what is known as cordillera. Okay. Example is Andes. Example is Andes. So we have diagrammatically also shown what is the impact on the oceans as well as what is the impact on the continents. All right. Let us go to the third one. The third combination is continent and continent convergence. Continent and continent convergence. Okay. You can say along such convergence, since there is no subduction, there is fusion of continents. There is fusion of continents to form a new Pangea, or a new supercontinent. A new Pangea or supercontinent. Okay. Now let us show the diagrammatic representation of C&C convergence. So you can take on this side the Eurasian plate, and on the side the Indian plate. This is the Indian plate. Look at this. There is no zone of subduction, but there is fusion. This is the Himalayas. Okay, this is the Himalayas. So here you can say no subduction but fusion of continent. No subduction, hence no destruction. No subduction, hence no destruction. Therefore, continents fuses. A new Pangea is formed. You can write one more diagram. You can write this. See, you can say on this side you have Europe, on this side you have Asia, and this is the Urals. Look at this. This is the Urals. You can say they fuse to form Eurasia. And you can take this side is India. So India is also fusing with Eurasia. So these two examples will show how C and C convergence, that is continent and continent convergence, will always result in fusion of continents to form a completely new Pangea. And that new Pangea will again be broken down by divergent plate boundaries. A new ocean is formed and all these blocks of Pangea will go to different places. Again, they'll all come together to form a completely new Pangea. So this is what the plate tectonics theory says us, that the Pangea, the formation of the Pangea, the breaking of the Pangea, the flight of the Pangea and coming back of the Pangea is a cyclical process. It has happened in the geological past of the earth. It is going to happen in the geological future of the earth as well. Alright, now let us conclude it. As I've already told you, let us conclude in a very positive note of disaster management. Okay, understanding the tectonics movement and disaster management. So you can conclude by telling that understanding the tectonic movements understanding the tectonic movements is not just for academic interest, but also necessary for predicting earthquakes, tsunamis and long-term climate changes associated with continental drift. Okay, so this completes the question of 16th, that is asking about the changes in the shape of ocean basins and continents associated with plate movements. Now you have seen how I have made sure that I have filtered out all the unwanted things for this particular context and just written exactly the context that it demands. So this is how you need to write when you have too much of content. Also, you should learn how to filter out the unwanted things and just write to the demand of the question. So I hope you have taken that skill and learnt about it. So this completes the 16th question. Let us go to the last question of geography of UPSC Mains 2025. Okay guys, now let us look at the 17th question of the geography section of UPSC Mains 2025. Let me first read out the question. That is, discuss the distribution and density of population in the Ganga river basin with special reference to land, soil and water resources. Okay, always make sure that you have developed a spatial sense and spatial content of India. Spatial sense and spatial content of India. What is spatial sense of India? When I say spatial sense of India, you should understand what is Himalayas. Even in Himalayas, if I ask you to write about Himalayas itself, you should understand what is Eastern Himalayas and what is Western Himalayas. That is spatial sense. If I ask you what is peninsular plateau, you should be able to draw the peninsular plateau. Even inside the peninsular plateau, you should have the spatial sense to dissect the peninsular plateau into Deccan plateau, Eastern plateau, Central plateau, that is the Vindhyas and Satpuras, and Northeastern plateau, that is the Meghalayan plateau. If I ask you the Gangetic plains, you should be able to dissect the Gangetic plains and talk about the upper Gangetic plains, that is the Rohilkhand plains, the middle Gangetic plains, that is the Awadh and Magadha plains, and the lower Gangetic plains, that is the Hooghly basin. See, this is what is known as spatial sense. You have to build a spatial sense. Once you have built the spatial sense, then you have to collect the spatial content. What is the spatial content? For example, if I talk about peninsular plateau, if you are talking about Deccan plateau, then in a Deccan plateau, what are the minerals, what is the soil, what is agriculture, what is the industrialization aspect in that. So like this, you have to collect different aspects of geographical factors. It can be climate, soil, water, minerals, resources, industries, population. All of this is what is known as spatial content. So you should, under any circumstances, have a very good spatial sense, and you should have made notes on the spatial content, which obviously is a must because the trend shows that we are moving towards this aspect of question, which is going to be repeated in the upcoming mains also. Alright, with that said, how to write this answer? Let me just elaborate with the schematic first, and then we will start writing the model answers. So in the schema, how are you going to write the answer? First, in the introduction. So in the introduction, I'm going to define Gangetic plains. How are you going to define Gangetic plains? I'm going to define Gangetic plains as aggradational plains that are formed due to the deposition of alluvial soil brought down by the rivers from the Himalayas. So this is how you define the Gangetic plains, and then you define their location. That is, they are located such that Himalayas is present at the north, peninsular plateau is located at the south. I will not use any data like 40% of the population is here, it constitutes 26% of the total surface area. If I use the data here, I will not be able to use it in the body. So you should be clever to define the Gangetic plains there and not use up all the data in the introduction. Then you run out of what to write in the body. You should not do that. Okay. So this is how I'll try to define what is Gangetic plains. Then I'm going to talk about Gangetic plains. I'm going to talk about in the body. I'm going to talk about Gangetic plains with respect to distribution and density. And here I'm going to analyze why the density and distribution is very high. Okay, and when I'm explaining why it is very high, I'm going to take land, I'm going to take soil, and I'm going to take water resources, and I'm going to substantiate how all this facilitates the population density as well as the population distribution. So this is how I'm going to talk about in the first part of the body. In the second part of the body, what I'll do is I will take the Gangetic plains. And then I will dissect the Gangetic plains into smaller parts. What is the smaller parts? I'll talk about upper Gangetic plains, that is the Rohilkhand plains and Ganga Yamuna Doab. Okay, and then I will talk about the middle Gangetic plains. Middle Gangetic plains means Awadh plains, Magadha plains, these are the middle Gangetic plains or Bihar plains. The next is lower Gangetic plains. You talk about Ugli basin. So this is what I'll talk. See, this second part becomes important because you're talking about a 15 marker. If it was a 10 marker, you could have stopped it here, you could have directly jumped to the conclusion. But because we are talking about 15 marker, you have to elaborate more, and this is where I am going to show the depth. Okay, finally we can conclude by talking about the significance of Gangetic plains for Indian development story. The significance of Gangetic plains in Indian development story. Okay, so this is how I'm going to schematize, or this is how I'm going to structurize my answer. So I hope you learned this structure. Let us start filling the flesh to the structure and write a proper model answer. Alright, so let us start off with the introduction. So in the introduction, you can start off by telling that Gangetic plains are aggradational plains that are formed by the alluvial sediments brought down by the rivers of Himalaya, rather than the rivers of Himalaya, that is Ganga and its tributaries. Okay, there here see the keywords that you have to use is aggradational plain, alluvial sediments. Okay, next point or next paragraph you can say Gangetic plains is bounded by Himalayas in the north and peninsular plateau in the south. Okay, now the third paragraph I'm going to write because it's a 15 marker, otherwise I would have jumped directly to the body. So in the next paragraph you can say Gangetic plains is largely having a flat monotonous topography, but from north to south, the topography can be classified as Babbar, Terai, Bangar and Kadar. Okay, so this is how you have to add value to your introduction to show your depth in geography. Okay, so this completes the introduction. Let us move to the body. As we discussed in the schematic, if we take the body, first I'm going to talk in general about the distribution and density of population in Gangetic plains. Distribution and density of population in Gangetic plains. Okay, here I'm going to talk about first point. You can say the Gangetic plains has the highest population of the country located in this region. Continue. The region is home to more than 40% of India's population. Okay, next point you can say the 40% of India's population resides in around 25% of India's land area, and hence the population distribution of Gangetic plains is very high. Okay, the next point you can say the population density of India is around 384 persons per 1 square kilometer. However, the population density of Gangetic plains is more than 1000 persons per square kilometer. Now let us show a diagrammatic representation of distribution of population in the Gangetic Plains. Because they have asked specifically about the distribution of population, you have to let us show the diagram of distribution of population in the Gangetic Plains. So you can show the Gangetic Plains like this. Okay, you can show the Gangetic Plains like this, and you can say on one side, look at this, this is 1, this is 2, and this is 3. The third one is, this is 3. Okay, so you can say this is having high population density. Okay, the next is this, you can say very high population density. The third is this color, so you can say high population density. Okay, there you can see average population density of Gangetic Plains is around or greater than 1000 persons per square kilometer. All right, now we have analyzed the distribution of population in Gangetic Plains. Now we have to find the reasons. Okay, the reasons for high population distribution and density in Gangetic Plains. Okay, so how to find the reasons? They themselves have given the keywords. Use the keywords and tell the reasons. So the first is land. You can say land. You can say the flat undulating topography. The flat undulating topography allows better accessibility and connectivity. That attracts more population. That attracts more population. Okay, this is the land. The second is the soil. You can say the soil is alluvial soil, which is the most fertile soil of India. Hence the carrying capacity of the land is naturally very high. Okay, the third one is water resources. Okay, you can say water resources. You can say Gangetic Plains as perennial rivers such as Ganga, Gaggara, Gandak and Kosi. The Gangetic Plains also have very rich aquifers with abundant groundwater. Next paragraph, this rich water resources has also enabled the high population distribution and density, in the region. Okay, so overall, broadly, we have spoken about the Gangetic Plains, the distribution and density of the Gangetic Plains, and the reasons for such high distribution and density of the population in Gangetic Plains. Now, let us dissect and look at it very specifically in the Gangetic Plains, how the distribution is there. All right, so you can give the next subheading. Let us go to the next page. Give the next subheading as analyzing Gangetic Plains. Put an hyphen and say at micro level. Okay, so now you can write this diagram. You can give the diagram of this particular map of India, and here you can show the Gangetic Plains divided into 3 sections. I'm going to show it to you. So you can divide the Gangetic Plains divided into 3 sections. So this is 1, this is 2, and this is 3. So 1 is upper Gangetic Plains, 2 is middle Gangetic Plains, and 3 is lower Gangetic Plains. Okay, so let us go one by one. We will go to every Gangetic Plain and we'll analyze the land, soil and water resources. Okay, now you will be able to write such level of specificity if you have developed the spatial content. I've already told in the beginning what is spatial content, so I want every one of you to understand the spatial sense of India and develop the spatial content of India. Okay, anyways, so let us continue with this. So the first one is Upper Gangetic Plains. Upper Gangetic Plains, so you can say this constitutes Rohilkhand Plains, and Ganga Yamuna Dohab, Okay, again, what to write inside this? They have already given the dimensions. I'm just going to cover it. Okay, now if I take soil, the soil is alluvial soil. Okay, agriculture, they mainly practice land. I'm taking as agriculture. Okay, agriculture, they mainly practice sugarcane cultivation. Okay, and water resources, you can say the rivers like Ganga and Yamuna, Ganga and Yamuna drain this region. Okay, so this is about the Upper Gangetic Plains. Now let us go to the, one more thing. Obviously you have to talk a little bit about population also. The population density is very high, or the population density is high, not very high, population density is high, and they are all mainly dependent on agriculture. Okay, that is one more point you can add. The second one is Middle Gangetic Plains. This constitutes Awadh Plains and Magadha Plains, or Bihar Plains. Okay, you can say this region as the highest population of India, as well as the highest population density of India. Okay, then you can say the land. When I say land, agriculture, they mainly practice wheat and maize. Okay, now you should understand this maize is used as fodder. Okay, so they mainly practice wheat and maize. Soil, again alluvial soil, but you can also say it also has terai soils which are very fertile, and it has kadar soils which are also very fertile. Okay, that also you can mention. The next is water resources, very rich. You can write the names of Gaggara, Gandak, Kosi. Okay, all these are important rivers that drain the region of Middle Gangetic Plains. So this is about the Middle Gangetic Plains. The next one, let's go to the third one. The third one is Lower Gangetic Plains. Okay, here you can say it constitutes the Hooghly Basin. Okay, soil is deltaic soil. Again, soil is deltaic soil, very fertile. Land, they mainly grow jute. Okay, and you can say 98% of India's jute mills are located in this basin. So soil, land. The next is water resources. Again, if you say water resources, it is drained by Hooghly River and Damodar River. Okay, again the last point, high population density due to high carrying capacity. So look at this. This is how at a macro scale also we have spoken about the Gangetic Plains in the context of land, soil and water resources, and then at the micro level also we have spoken about the Gangetic Plains in the context of land, soil and water resources. Alright, so let us conclude on a positive note. So you can conclude by telling, in the conclusion you can say the Gangetic Plains of India forms the agricultural and demographic backbone of India, and hence it is not just a geographical region, but a critical axis for India's developmental story. A critical axis for India's developmental story. Look at this. This is how we can end in the positive note. Now, as you observed how I brought different diagrams in this answer and how I divided one spatial region into micro regions. This is a skill that you have to learn when you practice a lot of answers in geography. Alright guys, then we have successfully finished the 8 important questions of geography section that was asked in UPSC Mains 2025. I hope that you people wrote the model answers with me, and I hope you realized the importance of writing, and because of writing, the things that you realized, the skills that was required, and the language that needs to be brought, and the diagrams that needs to be put in the geography answers. These are the skills that you will only be able to realize if you write answers with me, and I'm assuming that all of you people watching wrote the answers along with me. Now, I worked really hard to bring this program of Decode Mains 2025, so I hope my student community across India will make use of this program and make sure that they are prepared in this section of geography and they will ace this section in the upcoming Mains 2026. My one request is, please make sure that you share this video with as many people as possible in your groups, in your channels, in your community, so that this video gets as many views. That will actually keep me motivated to work hard like this for my student community. And also, if this video reaches genuine candidates, it will actually do a world of good for them to get good marks in this particular section of the GS papers. Alright guys, just to summarize whatever we have analyzed, whatever we have learnt in this entire session, the one is, if you take geography, you have to bring the language of geography. If you don't bring the language of geography, if you bring more facts, more programs, it will not seem like GS1 geography, it will seem like the GS3 environment or the GS3 economy or GS2 paper. So it is very important to bring the language, and to bring the language, I told you, the very important aspect is keywords approach. Okay, keywords approach is very, very important. So I hope you will inculcate the habit of using the keywords. And the next important thing is diagrams. You have to add a lot of diagrams. It should be maps, it can be illustrations, whatever it is. Make sure that you draw diagrams in geography answers. Now, this is not an understatement. This I cannot emphasize enough. Please draw diagrams, because the essence of geography is spatial distribution of phenomena. So the spatial distribution of phenomena can always be illustrated through diagrams, and hence you should always bring the map of world or the map of India to show the spatial distribution of phenomena. So these are the two things that is very, very critical for scoring really good marks in geography in GS1 of UPSC Mains. Also, we have learned while writing the answers several skills, and some skills are, when we are writing the introductions in geography, we learned that how we can define the terms geographically. The second, we also learned the importance of spatial sense and how that spatial sense will give us that spatial analysis of any phenomena that is asked. And also, we have learned how to dissect any region into micro regions and then analyze it and then put it back together. So these are the skills that you would have learned if you have written the answers with me, and all those students who have written the answers with me, I applaud your effort. I appreciate your diligence and commitment, and I can assure you the confidence that is built today, you will practice more and you will ace it in the upcoming Mains 2026. Finally guys, one last request is, please like, subscribe, and please comment in the comment section what was your feeling after writing all the 8 questions and model answers with me. I will be eagerly looking forward for your response, and more importantly, please share this video with as many students as possible, as many friends and communities as possible, so that will incentivize us and motivate me to work hard for the benefit of my student community. Thank you so much for all the love and support guys. I'll see you in the next video. I hope you will be ready for it. See you. Bye.